has changed.
Solid Snake said it correctly in 2008. War has changed. Now, that got me thinking about director Hideo Kojima. How was he able to blend fantasy, reality, and humor into one cohesive story known as Metal Gear? This question spiraled around in my brain, and then I thought of an even better question. The actual Metal Gear itself. In today's society, is it possible to create a walking bipedal tank? Today, on the New Age Gamers, I will sneak into the archives of technology, bust open the books on history, and find out if Metal Gear is just fantasy or something far more dangerous. We were going to have Brody help me present this episode, but he had a brain aneurysm midway through the second paragraph, and Bopes is still half dead on this subject. Let's start with the history in this game. I'm going to go back to the era of Big Boss, and where the next game in the franchise is going to take place, the Phantom Pain. Now, before you get all scared and think you're going to need a little notebook and a timeline and the mental ability of a supercomputer to stay with me here, don't worry, I will keep it pretty simple and only use the number titles. Sorry, Peace Walker and Portable Ops. I'm also not going to talk about TX55 or G or D. Sorry, Metal Gear 1 and 2. Just understand that Big Boss is also named Naked Snake, and years later he has a clone named Solid Snake. We aren't going to talk about all of the other clones or the whole story, so no spoilers here. We see the first look at Metal Gear in Metal Gear Solid 3, which is set in the Cold War, when Naked Snake, also known as Big Boss, sneaks into a research facility, only to find out that what he's looking for isn't there. He instead meets a man named Alexander Lovenovich Granin. Granin talks about a tank capable of walking and how it will revolutionize the way we think of tanks. His concept model shows mechs with legs, but a tank-like top. In the Cold War, this would be thought of as crazy. However, in Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, they are created, and they screw up the world something fierce, because now they are sought after every nation around the world. Now that you are caught up on the basics of the basics, let's look at the technology of the time. Especially in 1964, no one would ever sanction such a creation to be built. They overlooked Granin's design, creating a much more conventional weapon called the Shagohod, a tank capable of launching nuclear missiles across continents. Now, fast forward to the events of Metal Gear Solid set in 2005. Metal Gear Rex is created. If we look closely at Rex, we see that the legs are extremely armored, the whole body is near impenetrable, and it has 30mm Gatling guns. Oh, and if that wasn't enough, it has a freaking laser! However, the threat lies in the ability to launch a nuclear missile to anywhere in the world. Now, a giant mecha is extremely cool, but is it possible? In the 1960s? Absolutely not. In 2005? Maybe a concept model? Now that we are in 2015, things like these are becoming tangible. If we glance at the technological advances we have made up to this point, we will see robots able to maneuver at the push of a button, like the creations at Boston Dynamics, or a self-stabilizing robot able to assist the operator, much like the MIT robotic cheetah, and maybe even Metal Gear Ray. Unfortunately, the setbacks for these fictional and non-fictional creations are they have to be manned or controlled, and they also are very clumsy and clunky. Unfortunately, in the Metal Gear Solid universe, Hideo Kojima may have found a way around that, with the creation of Metal Gear Ray. Metal Gear Ray, created by the US Marines, was designed to surpass and destroy other versions of Metal Gear, effectively wiping the entire race out. How might you ask? Well, for starters, it has every weapon of Rex except a missile launcher. Instead, it has a water jet cutter capable of ripping through heavy armor like the heavy armor of other Metal Gears. Now, moving away from the science fiction just a little bit, let's talk about the invention that makes Metal Gear Ray. Ray is much more maneuverable than previous models for one very specific reason. Ray's inner workings use artificial cables that contract and expand when electricity is applied, much like a common muscle. It is much more accurate and agile. Now, we are talking crazy, right? There is no such thing as artificial muscle. Biology and cybernetics aren't the same thing. But if you'll just hear me out. Today in 2015, there is a theory called electric field actuation. In layman's terms, actuation means to incite or motivate. So let's talk about electric field motivation. In a nutshell, you apply electricity to a certain substance and it contracts. Take it away, and it expands, just like a human muscle. But if we have this technology, why don't we see any of our very own Metal Gears, driving us around, doing our taxes, battling like Pokemon? Unfortunately, I'd imagine they would cost a fortune. I mean, the average M1A2 tank costs roughly $8.5 million. However, the guy watching this late at night, eating a calorie mate with his Metal Gear fatigues on will say, "They were mass-produced in Metal Gear Solid 2! America!" Well, we thought about that. First, we need to calculate the weight and energy of something measurable, like an average adult male. The average adult male weighs about 180 pounds and produces about 300 watts of energy in a given day. Metal Gear Ray in the wiki weighs about 2,000 tons, so how much energy in watts does Ray produce? Well over 6 million watts. So unless you have the next big energy craze, I don't think you're going to be charging down the street with one of these anytime soon. But we are living at a time where these things do exist. I mean, robots? Electric field actuation? Calorie mates? Maybe, just maybe, a bipedal tank is right around the corner. This is Josh with the New Age Gamers, wishing you to go home.
Go home.